action. I'm actually gonna put this down now. What's up, YouTube? This is your friend, the neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that is going on in the world of movies and TV from my brand new set. I don't really feel like saying where it came from, though. It's just, it looks cool, doesn't it? So, like my last one, because I'm lazy, I'm doing another review montage. Basically just a run through of like the last couple of movies that I've seen since like, I want to say Tully was the last movie that I reviewed. So, due to my own laziness and just my ability to keep putting out content while I'm moving in the process of doing bigger and better things, this is my reviews for the last 7 to 8 movies that I have seen.
Hit it! There's this kid. He's in trouble.
Move or die. We're gonna form a super duper fucking group.
It's time to get back on LinkedIn.
Deadpool 2, directed by David Leitch, the director of Atomic Blonde and one of the co-directors of John Wick. He returns to direct The Merc with the Mouth after the previous director, Tim Miller, was fired for creative differences, which is basically just the thing that studio executives release when they didn't want the director to do what he wanted to do, which I don't exactly remember what that was. I think it was like either budgetary concerns or he didn't like the I don't remember what the reason was. Point being, everybody thought this movie was going to be screwed, but I am here to safely say that it was not. Ryan Reynolds continues to be amazing in this performance that he was basically born to play.
Dressed up as a sex toy.
So dark. You sure you're not from the DC universe?
And in this movie, he takes the meta humor up to new heights, and mixed with David Leitch's eye for action, it creates this nutso bonkers, one of the most violent, one of the most hilarious, and one of the most over-the-top action-related comic book movies that you've ever seen. They introduce a ton of new characters while still bringing you back all the old characters that you fell in love with from the first movie, and they even do a little bit more with them, i.e. Dopinder, the taxi driver, Colossus from the X-Men, and some of the new characters include Cable, played once again by Josh Brolin in a double performance after his turn as the Mad Titan, and Domino, played by Atlanta's Zazie Beetz. Each one of these new characters has their place in the film, and it all helps to sell that Deadpool, just the overall idea of Deadpool, is so much more than a typical superhero movie, even though it is supposed to be like the 22 Jump Street for superhero movies. But it was a lot of fun, it was hilarious. Some of the best jokes that I've seen this year in general came from this film, and yeah, great time watching it, and stick around for those post-credit scenes because they are some of the funniest things you will ever see.
Hit it! Ooh! Yeah! Your bullets. They're really fast.
You're after something. Is it revenge?
Solo, a Star Wars story, directed by Ron Howard, previously directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who were fired when Kathleen Kennedy realized that she wanted to make a Star Wars movie and not a comedy movie, even though she hired 2 comedy directors. I'm not gonna get into that right now, that's a long story. The movie Solo itself was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. It was very consistent, it felt very old school, it had a very slick feel of adventure to it, and probably the biggest surprise is the fact that Alden Ehrenreich, despite the fact that, yes, nobody asked for it, was actually kind of spectacular as young Han Solo. He captured all the beats without ever feeling like a parody, and he also never felt like he was doing an impression of the character, i.e. like what Donald Glover was doing this entire movie.
He's the best smuggler around.
I heard a story about you. I was wondering if it's true.
Everything you've heard about me is true.
Outside of a few scripting problems and a few character choices that didn't really make any sense, and the very predictable, obvious nature that you know exactly where this is gonna go, I still had a fun time with it. The behind the scenes problems besides, it was a good fun time, and as a Star Wars movie, even though I would say skip it if you're like really into the story of Star Wars, because this doesn't really tell you anything that you didn't know. If you just wanna go have a fun time at a Star Wars movie, I would say, yeah, watch this one.
So glad we took this job!
Females awake, boys. Let's get laid. Hello.
Now this one's another weird choice, and it's an A24 movie. A24 is a studio that either seems to have to only release three sets of movies, I should say. The critically beloved ones that people go bananas over and have nothing but good things to say about, i.e. your Moonlights, your Good Times. Spectacular Now was one. Lady Bird was one that was really well received. Room got a bunch of Oscar nominations a couple of years ago. There's those types of A24 movies. And then there's...
Welcome.
They must be from California.
It's gonna be all right. Just corner the one that looks the loneliest and speak in short sentences.
Hello, my name is N, short for Henry.
I'm Zan.
Now that is punk.
Do more punk to me.
It kind of falls into that category of those weird A24 movies that they put out and then you don't really notice them. And that was kind of the case with this next movie, How to Talk to Girls at Parties, which is directed by John Cameron Mitchell, who I know directed Hedwig and the Angry Inch back in 2001, although I've never actually seen that film. But if it's anything like this movie, I can tell this guy's got a penchant for the weird, because basically it's borrowing a lot of vibes from Sing Street from 2016, which I thought would bother me at first, but as it turns out, the film actually managed to develop a very unique identity on its own, which I really appreciated. And even though it was really weird, it never felt weird just for the sake of being weird. It felt like it actually had a purpose to it and was actually helping to further this story, because it's about this kid growing up in 1970s punk London who, him and his friends, after leaving a party one night, are trying to look for the after party, and they stumble upon this house with all these weird cult-like people dressed in like multicolored suits. And he ends up falling for this one girl who's played by Elle Fanning, who, it's hilarious to me that she's kind of even more famous and a better actress than her sister, even though her sister is probably gonna make her big comeback when she appears in the new Tarantino movie next year. They end up getting together, and they just it's just how they go on their adventures throughout London while they're being pursued by her cult. But it's so much more than that. It's weird, it's wacky, but it's got a lot of heart to it, which I wasn't expecting. And the ending, while it will make sense, but it won't make sense. It's one of those movies that you have to watch and just see without knowing anything beforehand before you can come to a decision. So that's How to Talk to Girls at Parties.
Cock this planet up royally, but at least we're alive. We like to eat, we like to dance, we like to fall in love, and we try and fix what our parents screwed up. Are you lot with me?
As a quadriplegic, it must be frustrating for you, someone who liked to get things done with their hands.
Here's the thing. 4 guys murdered my wife.
Don't you fucking touch her!
If I could find these men, I'd do it.
What if I told you I could offer you something that would enable you to walk again?
The next film is one that I was not expecting to be good at all, and that is another Blumhouse movie, which Blumhouse completely rocked the world last year with 3 horror movies that nobody was expecting to be as good as they were. And then this year they got off to a rocky start with Truth or Dare, but they seem to have reclaimed their footing as Lee Winnell, the writer who ended up releasing Insidious 4: The Last Key earlier this year, ends up turning out a movie called Upgrade that looked like the most generic movie you've ever seen, that literally looked frame by frame like it was exactly like the Venom trailer that came out that Sony released. As it turns out, this movie turned out to be a lot more clever, a lot more unique, a lot more fun, and a lot more dark and violent than I would have expected.
Mission granted!
Thank you.
I really appreciate for that, because it's kind of getting back to the Blumhouse that we saw last year, where instead of just being known for making cheap horror movies that use all of the cheap get-arounds, they end up actually putting a lot of thought and effort into being more creative with that, and as a result, they're able to actually make you have a fun, unique experience that you wouldn't expect. And so the basic premise is that this guy, who's played by Logan Marshall Green, who unfortunately throughout his entire career so far in Hollywood his biggest thing is people mistake him for Tom Hardy, which is understandable. He looks very much like a skinnier, taller version of him. They live in a dystopian future, but because it's Blumhouse, they don't really harp on it. Like, there aren't really a lot of those sweeping shots that help to highlight the world like you would see in like a Blade Runner or something like that. It's a lot more down to earth. It's a lot more gritty, and that helps to sell the more realistic elements to it. And so he's like, of course, the guy that is like, oh, I don't want anything to do with machines. I hate machines. Human beings are like losing their ability to think and go on their own. Of course, it starts off really clunky with the dialogue, and you think it's gonna go in one direction. But the interesting thing about this film is that it doesn't, because so he gets into an accident with his wife because these 4 men like attack them. They kill his wife. They paralyze him, so he's now quadriplegic. And then as he's in the hospital trying to recover, he tries to kill himself or something. The scientist comes and offers to put an experimental chip in his neck that allows him to walk again. And it's called STEM. And he basically becomes a cyborg ninja that ends up going out to find his wife's killers. Now that sounds like a goofy premise that would be found in a terrible late 90s action movie, but it actually works. It is actually super violent because they don't hold back with the violence. They're really, really creative with the kills. And the twist at the end, just concerning everything, I don't want to spoil that because it's too good to miss, but it does help to sell this movie and make it a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So Upgrade is one that I would definitely recommend, whether you're into horror, whether you're into action, whether you're just into seeing something original and unique from this year of 2018.
We are going to finish the job we started.
I've decided to keep a journal to set down all my thoughts and the simple events of my day. I will keep this diary for 1 year, and at the end of that time, it will be destroyed.
So next we have another A24 film. Like A24 is like the opposite of Netflix, where even though they have been their quality of film overall has been being dragged down a lot for these last 2 years, they're still managing to churn out unique and incredible films. And this one comes from the writer of Taxi Driver, Paul Schrader, who also directs this film, which stars Ethan Hawke as a priest who goes through a major crisis of faith and undergoes some very strange and bizarre events around him in order to find his purpose, if you will. Paul Schrader with this movie, literally when the review said that he was making a modern day version of Taxi Driver, they were not kidding. There are a lot of shots of Twilight in this film that help to illuminate some of the more darker elements of his personality that he's feeling. But the interesting thing about it is that Ethan Hawke, he never goes like the straight up vigilante route. This isn't a conventional film by any means. I should have probably mentioned that before. If you're looking for any sort of conventionality, like a typical thing like, oh, this priest is gonna realize that Mother Earth is being destroyed, he's gonna go on a haywire and kill all of the greedy, evil businessmen. It has a lot of elements that make you think that, but the brilliant thing about this film and this screenplay is that it never actually takes you there. It constantly skirts you away from it in a direction that feels clever and intuitive and that you don't see coming. And while certain people will occasionally find this forced, this film does also have brief moments of levity. It is also smart, it is endearing, it is funny, it is tragic, but in a good way. Ethan Hawke, I would argue, gives one of the best performances of his career, which I feel really bad because this guy really is a great actor from everything that I've seen him in, and he does not get nearly enough credit. This time, I really feel that he deserves something, and it's a shame that this film came out so early in the year because I don't know if he will get anything for it, which is unfortunate, but Amanda Seyfried is really great in it. And just the overall, oh man, what's the word? The source of mystery you get from what seems like a straightforward story is really something that makes this film worth checking out. So First Reformed, I don't know if it's still playing in theaters, but if you get a chance to see it, check it out. You will not regret it.
In the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb, are your garments spotless, are they white as snow?
My hands shake as I write these lines.
Are you washed in the
Come on, Peter. Let's just do it.
Okay, wow, that's 3 A24 films in a row. I'm either doing something really right or really wrong because I wish I had been doing this with A24 films back in 2015 and 2014 because, oh man, that was like the heyday of A24. So this next one, it's the newest one. It's the most divisive movie of the year. Some say it's a horror masterpiece. Others say it's generic garbage that was misleading and didn't give them anything that they hadn't seen them before. Some people, few and far between as they are a mix between, and that is Hereditary, directed by Ari Aster.
It's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today. I know my mom would be very touched and probably a little suspicious.
Toni Collette has just lost her mother and her family is in grief, but all of a sudden strange things start happening around them, and the family begins to wonder if it is something supernatural that has come back from the grave to haunt them, or if Toni Collette just really is a raving lunatic. Along for the ride is her 2 children, played by Alex Wolff, younger brother of Nat Wolff, and I'm currently forgetting the name of the girl that plays his sister, but she is also really good. The father, played by Gabriel Byrne, it's nice to see him in a movie again. Ann Dowd is in this movie. She is extremely creepy and gives a great performance, and I'm starting to understand why everybody went gaga over her in The Handmaid's Tale.
My mother was a very secretive and private woman.
Here's the thing, this film, well, I'm one of those people that gives credit to good filmmaking when I see it, because this film was immaculately made, the set design, the shots.
Baby, she wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you. She was a very difficult woman, which maybe explains me.
I recognize you from your mother.
What?
There were certain times where it could just be like a regular shot of just like some kids chilling out and smoking weed, and the camera, the way that it moves, it helps to fill the atmosphere with so much tension when there shouldn't be any tension at all. It's really, really spectacular. The thing is, though, is that as much as I love the atmosphere that this film generates, I still feel that the problem is with the writing, because I feel like the script could have been a lot stronger and gone for something a lot different than what it ended up being, which I won't spoil, which again, I will not spoil any sort of twist endings here, but let's just say that this film makes you think it's going in either one of only two directions, and then the ending, what actually happens is it feels like a new direction that was just invented out of nowhere that doesn't feel like it goes along with the source of the film at all. That being said, for the parts that were messed up, it was certainly messed up. A lot of twists and turns that I did not see coming in this movie. I love the atmosphere, and good freaking God, I can't lie and say that Toni Collette deserves this Oscar, like right now, before I see anybody else later on in the year. So, Hereditary, I'm not the biggest fan of where it turned out, but for the ride that I got, I would say that it is indeed worth seeing. Although it is not the scariest horror movie ever made. I can officially say that.
I don't like this. Dad, I don't like this.
What's happening? Tina! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Please stop! Mom, what's happening? Make it stop! Make it stop!
I just don't want to put any more stress on my family.
Most violent riot in California history.
The largest civil unrest.
3 minutes. Open the vault now! Oh, that's real nice.
You don't want it?
No, I really do.
Hit the ground now!
I need to make a call.
Hello.
Well, this seems more like an average 2018 review, a film that had a lot of promise and a lot of potential and turned out to be extremely disappointing. That's Hotel Artemis.
The Artemis is a secret hospital for criminals.
I thought you were done with all this.
I got out, but you know how it goes.
You're never out. Not a peep.
Written and directed by Drew Pearce, who's another first-time director, and good freaking God, this film was trying so hard to be a Tarantino movie, and it just missed the beat on every single possible moment that it could have, which is really disappointing considering the cast that they have. How do you go wrong with a cast like that? The interesting thing, though, is that this cast is the best part about this movie. For the moments that they are together kind of just bouncing off of each other, they have some really awesome moments, some really tender moments, some really sweet moments, some really interesting moments. Jodie Foster in this entire movie completely commits. She commits to her character. You have a lot of unexpected depth from her that really help to flesh her out and make you understand why she's doing what she's doing. And also, this film does a good enough job separating itself from John Wick, which is what it was getting compared to a lot during all the advertising run.
3D printing complete.
I got the next best thing. I got a gun.
I guess my ballroom days are over.
But the problem is, again, with the writing, a lot of the characters are one note. Most of them are completely wasted, unfortunately. Sophia Boutella is playing the same thing she's played in the last 5. And there's also moments where the pacing is all over the place. The dialogue, it's interesting at parts, but it lags at others. Some parts are really cliched and obvious. Some parts are kind of interesting and new. But this is a film overall that just had a lot of missed potential. So go see it if you want, but I can't heavily recommend Hotel Artemis.
Visiting hours are never.
Busy night at the Artemis.
Did you wash your hands? With soap? Did you dry them?
What? Is this all vegetables? Who wanted all vegetables?
I did. So, are we going to talk about it?
Why?
The elephant in the room.
What elephant?
All right, let's just get this one over with real nice and quick. I am not a fan of Incredibles 2 or the current direction that Pixar seems to be going in, both of their originals and their sequels, because I am not the biggest fan of Coco either. I love The Incredibles. It's one of the greatest animated films I've ever seen. It's clever, it's smart, it's nuanced, it doesn't feel poppy in your face. It feels more quiet and down to earth, kind of like a lot of the films that the old Pixar did. I'm talking your first two Toy Stories, I'm talking your Monsters, Inc., your Finding Nemo's, even Cars and Ratatouille to an extent. Yes, I like the first Cars, sue me. But this movie, again, it's just kind of a lot of the same problems I have with Coco. Very poppy, very in your face, very over the top dialogue. It doesn't feel, there never feels like there's any quiet moments for me to just sit there and enjoy things. Like the dinner scene, almost every single quiet moment in this film feels like a rehash from the first one. And the action sequences, while really well animated and really well done, I just can't invest in them as much because I don't feel like at certain points I feel like I'm watching completely different characters from the first one. Like none of them sync up. Mr. Incredible, he is acting so much dumber in this movie than he was in the first one. Like say what you will about the mistakes he made in the first one, but at the very least he showed that he was a smart guy capable of figuring stuff out. And I just feel like this one, it's too easy and obvious and really lazy writing. And Elastigirl, as much as I love Holly Hunter, again, I don't feel like I'm getting the same vibes. The plot ends up being really, really predictable. Those kids, oh my God, who knew that giving them more screen time would end up making them more annoying? Because Violet's whole teenage angst phase feels like something that got ripped out of a Nickelodeon cartoon. Dash completely gets the shaft and is reduced to doing literally nothing except babysitting duty in this entire movie. And while Jack, the moments with him were enjoyable, I still feel like for the most part they just use him as a punchline. An effective punchline, but a punchline nonetheless. And then the third act twist with who the villain is and what their overall end game has to be, like, it doesn't feel like a satisfying sequel at all. And now what I will say is that I'm glad that Brad Bird returned to direct this one, similar to how Andrew Stanton did with Finding Dory. But again, it's similar to this one. It was enjoyable at parts and it could have been a lot better, but as a sequel, standing up to the creative amazingness that came from the first two, it just doesn't hold up that well. So I recommend it to any general viewing audience who enjoys watching just mainstream cinema in general. But just for me, myself, I couldn't get on board with Incredibles 2.
Combustion imminent? What does that mean? Ah!
It means fire, Robert.
Susan, you take Jerry to be your husband.
What's the difference between Episcopalian and Lutheran?
Episcopalians don't eat fish.
That's pescatarian. That's not a religion.
They're all fanatics. I don't know. You may kiss the bride.
I love you.
Please tell me what's going on here.
Our group of friends has been playing the same game of tag for 30 years.
What?
And the last film in this montage is Tag, a film with a trailer that came out of nowhere, and surprisingly enough, there was only one trailer ever released for this, which I'm still kind of shocked by, but it ended up helping to make this film an even more special experience than it was, because Tag, similar to Game Night, was an inventive, creative, off-the-walls, nuts, and just fun to watch comedy.
For the entire month of May, every year, we play tag. You got me.
First off, another great cast, which unlike Hotel Artemis was used to its full effect. I'm talking Ed Helms from The Office, John Hamm from Mad Men, Jake Johnson from New Girl, Hannibal Buress from The Eric Andre Show, and Hawkeye himself, Jeremy Renner, as a group of 5 friends who every May for the last 30 years have gotten together and played a game of tag. The only thing is, this time around, Jeremy Renner's character, nicknamed Jerry, is planning on retiring. And considering the fact that he has never been tagged, the ways in which they explain this are ridiculous.
Our buddy Jerry is the best that ever played, and now he wants to retire. Never been tagged. Just saying. So who's it?
His friends are going to get together and use all their resources in order to finally tag him before the game and their friendship, their beautiful friendship, ends forever. There are a lot of moments in this movie that could have been awful, but instead they got the right set of writers. This director, despite being another first-time director, made the most of just like taking this and going as nuts and off the wall with it as they can, because you kind of have to, considering this premise. It's a bunch of 40-year-old men playing tag with each other.
Can't touch this. This is the year we get Jerry. Can't touch this.
Synchronize your watches.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't wear a watch.
Time is a construct.
They just go so nutso with the camera angles, and they really are creative. The soundtrack is awesome. It literally makes you feel like you're watching an action movie at points.
Some couples go on cruises, some couples go camping, some couples go to strip clubs and have gangbangs.
The comedy beats never ever miss. It feels very clever with its humor. I love the chemistry between these guys. I think some critics out there were saying that like it's a little bit distracting because they don't all look the same age. And yeah, I'll admit Ed Helms, John Hamm, and Jeremy Renner all do look significantly older than Jake Johnson and Hannibal Buress. But for me, at least, the back and forth between them was so good, I didn't honestly care. I thought that there were going to be a couple of weak spots in this cast. There's a subplot that doesn't really make sense, but it's harped on so little that it didn't bother me at all. And just the overall creativeness that they got with whenever they showed Jeremy Renner, because Jeremy Renner's whole thing is that in order to avoid getting tagged by his friends, he would literally turn into a ninja superhero and commit acts that make him look, that just make you think, oh, so this is what Hawkeye was supposed to be. And he's just, it's almost like they took Hawkeye out of Infinity War and just dropped him in this movie specifically so that he could like show a bunch of like regular comedians how it's done. Like okay, so this is Hawkeye compared to the Avengers. Why don't we put Hawkeye compared to some like regular middle class people and see what happens? And it actually is kind of satisfying. But even if you don't think about it in that way, it still is a hilarious time at the theater. You'll have a lot of fun. It's also extremely dark and mean-spirited, which I was not expecting at all. And despite the fact that that worries me a lot of the times about comedies, when utilized right, dark humor is some of the best humor there is. And this humor got so dark at points, but it ended up all working, surprisingly enough. And Isla Fisher, good God, like, she was amazing in this. Like, probably gonna be one of the most overlooked performances of the year.
This is just what we love. This is our gangbang.
So that's Tag. Better than Game Night, no, but still just to know that there's another enjoyable comedy that you could just have an absolute blast with. It's basically the equivalent of last summer's Baby Driver, only it's not directed by Edgar Wright, and it's about 30-year-olds playing tag.
Eat my dick.
Balls.
But
Ice cream.
what?
He knows I'm lactose intolerant. He's taunting me.
So that was my review montage for the last couple of movies that I've seen. I'll hopefully be churning out more content over the summer. I'm not quite sure though, because I'm really busy and I'm just in the middle of an upgrade just in general. No, I'm not making a pun about the movie. I'm just saying I am in the middle of upgrading my life right now. So that's it. I might be back next time with another quick batch of reviews, something else. I'm not sure. I'm trying to work towards more things, more podcasting. That's not important right now. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. Click the like button or the subscribe button. I'm at 123 subscribers right now. I was not expecting to be at that by this time of the year. Follow me on Twitter at Movie Nerd Review. Follow me on Instagram at just my name, Dominic Rizzi, and head over to both of my websites, movienerdreviews.com and letterboxd.com for each of my reviews and rankings of my films that I have seen. That is it. I will see you guys next time.